Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Enyegolu. Now, that unwritten rule of alternating power between North and South in Nigeria is being put to the test once again, with Southern governors insistently making the case that after 8 years of a Northern president, the next head of state should be produced by the South. The next presidential ballot is, of course, in 2023, and the governors of the South have essentially thrown down the gauntlet. But what if their Northern counterparts choose to pick up the gauntlet and wage a fight? Well, analysts say this will open the way for what they predict will be increasingly vicious sniping, or worse, from both sides.
Governors Forum, at the end of its meeting held today, reviewed the situation in the country and focused on the current security situation, constitutional amendments, and petroleum industry bill. The forum reviewed the security situation in the country and commended the security operatives for their relentless efforts in restoring security and safety. We commiserate with families and loved ones who have fallen in the line of duty. The forum re-emphasized the need for state police. The forum set a timeline of Wednesday, the 1st of September 2021 for the promulgation of the anti-grazing law in all its member states.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the publisher of Daybreak newspaper, Dr. Austin Maho, who's also a lecturer at the International Institute of Journalism here in Abuja, and by the legislative expert and public affairs analyst Chibuzo Okereke, who's also the convener of the National Political Equity Movement in Nigeria. Thank you to both of you for coming in. And Dr. Maho, this demand by Southern governors that the region produce Nigeria's next president, what do you make of it? Is it likely to strengthen the agitation for a Southern president?
You know, of all the agenda or from the communique they put out after their meeting, you know, if you look at, I think it's a 5-point demand.
6 point.
6 points. Of all of them, that one to me is a little bit confusing, because I would want to believe that it's a foregone conclusion that the presidency is moving to the South.
Why is it a foregone conclusion?
A foregone conclusion in the sense that, one, the APC, for instance, has already, although not officially, it can be assumed that they have zoned the presidency to the southern part of the country, because currently they are shopping for the chairman of the party, and they are not looking, if you look at tradition, they are not looking to the northern part of the country, to the southern part of the country to get a national chairman for the party, but rather the north. You can't have a party chairman from the north and also the president from the north. It has never been a tradition. So for the fact that they are shopping for the party chairmanship from the northern part of the country, it indicates that obviously they are going to zone the...
It suggests.
Yes, or indicates. Then added to that, most of the political voices in the north, including someone like El-Rufai, is even saying, look, the presidency should go to the south. And he himself has excluded himself from contesting for the presidency come 2023. So if you put all of this together, one can reasonably say, well, the north has considered, you know, the 2023 presidency to the south. So bringing it to the forerunner, maybe they have information that many of us are not privileged to. It could be that they are trying to emphasize it. They are trying to tell their northern counterpart that, look, the presidency must return or come back to the south. But at the end of the day, when you push there are political things you work out behind the scene. I don't feel that should have been part of the communique they issued yesterday.
Right. Well, I mean, they clearly felt, Chibuzo Okereke, that it was important to make that point stridently, because as Dr. Maho said, they may have information that we're not aware of. We certainly know that tradition of alternating power means that, for example, because I've heard some of them saying this, some of them being some people from other different parts of the country, the idea of alternating power meant that a northerner would normally have stood for president in 2011. That's what people from the north often hearken back to. Some of them backed Atiku Abubakar at the time, the former vice president, to be the PDP candidate at that time. But Goodluck Jonathan, using his power of incumbency, won the nomination. So there's a question mark over whether or not this rotation of power follows this kind of, to and fro between North and South.
Okay, yeah, I think that that statement is very important, one, and for them to consider it important is in line with principles of democracy. Because when you are in a democratic setting, one of the key things you do is to voice out your aspirations. And it's important that they have also, done that. And then looking at Nigeria, democracy is not the same everywhere. Nigeria's democracy is unique for many reasons. And as you know, there are certain people in the north who are putting one or two together and saying that late President Yar'Adua did only 2 years. And then somebody from the south came and did 6 years. Absolutely. And then if you add it to President Obasanjo, 8 years, you're going to have 14. So they are aware those permutations are going on. So that is important for them to give it a voice. And what is key is that the people that have made this statement is a bipartisan statement, not just from one political party, but people from two major parties. And I think that what they are doing is to find direction for leadership for the country by rising above partisan concern and sending a message that this is important for the unity of the country. And for me, it's important that they put that statement in that resolution, so that not that a northerner will not contest, but a direction for Nigerian presidency that is beyond politics, for unity, for inclusion, for fairness, for justice, that this is how we should go, in line with the rising tensions we are having, because it's also connected to politics.
Right, okay, let me bring you in, Dr. Maho, because when you say that a northerner can still contest, I mean, what does that mean in practical terms? Because from what I understand, and I may be wrong, the two main political parties normally field the candidates and they make the choice, like, okay, we're going to zone it to this, that, or the other thing. And they both fielded northern candidates in the 2019 presidential election. They are yet to take a decision on whether they'll cede their tickets to the South. What are the issues there that might be a reproach to making that decision?
No, the issue, like he said, I agree with him. That is why I said earlier that, the southern governors may have access to information that we don't have access to. And if you watch the political terrain in the country as it is playing out, there are moves. There are people who feel that 2023, because of the state of insecurity in the country, because of, you look at what the information we got yesterday about the Electoral Act, that is an attempt to vote electronically and not transmit the result electronically. It doesn't make sense. So you may begin to feel that there are undercurrents of play going on within the policy, the polity to retain power in the north. These permutations are there. They say 24 hours is a very long period of time in politics.
Absolutely.
Not to talk of when the period of time is between now and 2023. A lot can still happen.
Yeah.
So that is why I said earlier that the southern governors may have access to information that we don't have access to.
Okay.
And that may have forced their hand to say, look, whatever permutation is going on,
we are watching,
we are watching.
Okay.
And insisting that, look, 2023 is the turn of the South. For crying out loud, Buhari has done 8 straight years. 8 straight years.
Okay. Let me just ask you guys to hold on. We'll come straight back. I'll let you finish when we come back, and then we'll come to you. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our analysis of the statement issued at the end of a meeting of Southern governors in Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as Nigeria gears up for the 2023 presidential election, and agitation for a southern president continues to grow, the country's southern governors have demanded that presidential power rotate to the south. At the end of a meeting in Lagos, the governors issued a 6-point statement in which the question of a southern president in 2023 featured prominently. But there were also other matters. They took issue with the removal of the electronic transmission of election results from the Electoral Act, protested against the proposed 30% share of profit for the exploration of oil and gas in the basins, and rejected the proposed 3% share of oil revenues to the host community as contained in the petroleum industry bill. They also gave their members a deadline of the 1st of September to effect the anti-open grazing law in all of Nigeria's southern states. And there were a host of other issues as well. And with me in the studio, the publisher of Daybreak newspaper, Dr. Austin Maho, who's also a lecturer at the International Institute of Journalism here in Abuja, and the legislative expert and public affairs analyst, Chibuzo Okereke, who's also the convener of the National Political Equity Movement in Nigeria. Thank you for staying with us. And we interrupted you before we went on a break, so I apologize.
Okay.
But let's move on from there, since we've kind of beaten that horse quite a bit. Do you think this inter-ethnic and regional competition for power in Nigeria weakens or strengthens Nigeria's democracy?
If you are looking at, because what we are actually looking at is the meeting of the 17 Southern governors yesterday. And if you look at the history of Nigeria's political development, especially in the last 6 years, comprehensively, I would say this is the first time the southern part of the country, southern governors are coming together across party line, like you observe, APC, PDP.
And across ethnic lines, because they're different ethnic groups.
Coming together to forge a common front, to make statement that you say is binding on all of them. It's like a follow-up to the Asaba Accord. You know, if you look at most of what they said, from the communique they issued, it's a follow-up. And irrespective of the federal government and the Attorney General's grandstanding about open grazing, they have reinstated their position about open grazing.
So that's definitely going ahead.
So if you take that determination, that line of thinking, to their determination to make sure that the presidency comes to the southern part of the country in 2023, you can say that, look, these people have their game plan to counterpose whatever any other part of the country is putting on the table. They clearly have their game plan. And what is their game plan? To make sure that the presidency comes to the southern, irrespective.
But if the North took the same
let me
position,
just drop this. Irrespective of political differences, APC or PDP, or irrespective that the contestation for the presidency is going to be between three key zones in the southern part of the country, the south-south, the southwest, and the southeast. I think that is why earlier I said they shouldn't have brought this to the front burner. Issues can be resolved, behind the scene. Consensus can be built.
Yeah, but sometimes it's important to declare your hand publicly, so there's no question about it.
They've declared to Nigerians that, look, we won the presidency in 2003. Right. But other, at times the devil is in the detail. Which part of the South-South is going to get
that's the question I was going to put to you, Chibuzo Okereke, because it's one thing to say that, as Dr. Maho pointed out, that you're presenting a united front, but we know that that's not really united, because they've all got ambitions for their own zones. How do you think that's going to work out? Because now they've got to go back and say, you've got the south-south, southeast, southwest. Who's going to get the presidency?
Well, the important thing is that they anchor their demand on the principle of equity, fairness, and justice. And that is very important. So when we come back to the south, we have to follow the same principle. And what will that principle mean? It means that Southwest had produced president for 8 years, and then vice president for 8 years now. It will mean that South-South had produced vice president for 2 years and then president for 6 years. So which zone in the South hasn't made a shot at the presidency is Southeast.
So you think essentially that eliminates the Southwest from
well,
having any kind of
other
political ambition?
interests will come to play. But
Right.
what we're saying is, if you go to equity, you must come with clean hands. You can't go to the national to secure presidency to the South with the principles of equity and then upturn it when we try to micro zone. And some people have argued that this zoning and all that affect principle of merit and what have you. And my answer has been no. When merits are equal, equity and justice will prevail. In this case, merits are equal. Constitutionally, everybody is empowered to run for the presidency. So we're all qualified, and that is the merit level. Every zone in this country has people with capacity and competence to deliver the job. So I'm happy that they have made this statement and is anchored on the tenets of democracy. So when we return, we should also promulgate that, because without inclusion and participation, there is no democracy. And if people have been crying that we need opportunity to give people who are almost 30 years plus, and even up to 50 years, a sense of belonging guaranteed under Chapter 2 of our Constitution.
Right.
I think it's an aspiration that should be met.
Okay,
at
and
this
talking
time.
about giving people a sense of belonging, Dr. Maho, can zoning the presidency to the Southwest, I mean the South in general and the Southeast in particular, help save Nigeria from degenerating further into conflict and insecurity and all the rest of the other problems?
See, Charles, there's no doubt. When you look at the country today, when you look at what is happening in the southeastern part of the country, there's no doubt, anybody who is objective, we agree that the southeastern part of the country feel a sense of alienation from the Federation. They have been unfairly treated in the last 60 years in terms of recognition, federal presence, appointment. And there's no way, it has gotten to a point, a ridiculous level that is no longer defendable, no matter how you try to defend it. And what the Southeast has, each time we talk about the Southeast, everywhere you point at the second Niger Bridge. These guys are not talking about the second Niger Bridge. What they are talking about is political inclusion. They want to feel a sense of inclusion when it comes to the fact that is one Nigeria. When you have a government that is implementing divisive policies across board when it comes to the political, economic, and social scene, people are bound to agitate. You can't have a federation unit with 3 major ethnic groups and one group is left behind. We can give instances where the divisive tendencies of this country affect primarily the southeastern part of the country, and obviously the result that they feel a sense of marginalization. And it is this sense of marginalization, unfairness, that is giving rise to people like Nnamdi Kanu, unfortunately. However, the federal government, the Nigerian Federation, I believe, for once, should accept that the Southeast is a marginalized part of the country. They never had it so bad. Immediately
But is it unique to the Southeast, though? I mean, there are so many aspects of this country that simply don't cater for anybody.
The case of the southeastern part of the country, you know, we all agree that one way or the other, many parts of the country can claim that they are being marginalized, but the Southeast is a special case. Since 1970, when the Civil War came to an end, and of course the Gowon administration declared a policy of no victor, no vanquish, you find out that as at 1979, because of that policy, you had an Igbo person attend, yes, Alex Ekweme.
Just 9 years after
the Civil War. It shows that his policy of no victor, no vanquish
was working at that time.
Right. But what has happened thereafter?
Is that people have a short memory, basically.
What has happened after then? And what has happened specifically in the last 6 years?
Right. Okay, let me bring you in, Chibuzo Okereke. Is it this political tribalism, if you like, if I might use that term, that's to blame for the problems in this country? Or is Nigeria's democracy weak because it is an imported ideology that's imposed on an artificial political unit known as Nigeria, bearing in mind that the territory known as Nigeria has emerged not from an African but a European logic?
Well, I don't think it's political tribalism. It's a unique political system that nature bequeathed to us. Even before now, just like he mentioned, and I agree with him totally, before that we have 3 major ethnic groups, even though we recognize there are many minority groups. And they carried on till this period. We should have us push the ethnic minorities up, not strangulate even the major ethnic group that contributed to the struggle for independence. And
well, a lot of minority groups contributed as well. I mean, to the independence.
Yeah, but the principle of majority.
If you look at Anthony Nahara, if you look at people from you know the
absolutely
the Calabar area, Cross River.
But tribalism gives you identity. It's not always in the negative. Even though in Nigeria it's used merely as a tool for political mobilization. That is the biggest challenge. However, these are voting blocks. They are also political blocks, aside their cultural identities. So it's important that when you have a system, you recognize how unique your system is and take steps to address things that bring the country together and unite, the country. And Chapter 2 of the Constitution heavily captures this. It's the operators of the Constitution, and that's why I agree with him. The leadership style, the personnel of the individual, your beliefs, can affect a country. And that is why leadership is very important in driving a united Nigeria. If you are connected to your ethnic group and you can't rise above that to recognize the country, as captured in history at independence, each of these ethnic groups were speaking for their ethnic nationality. Nobody was speaking for Nigeria. And that is what we are still battling today. Who is that leader that will rise above ethnicity? Because we should no longer be speaking just for our ethnic group, but for the country, since we now have a country. And that is the challenge we are facing. We are still at the struggle of independence.
That's a very, very important point. Yeah. And Dr. Maho, we've got about a minute and a half or so before, sadly, we have to end the chat. But looking at the analysis from both of you and your viewpoints, it all seems to point to the complexity of what lies ahead, whatever route you take, as the 2023 general elections approach and as Nigeria gets older, basically.
See, what Nigeria needs, let me just carry on from what he said. What Nigeria needs at this point in its history is inclusiveness. Whether you are a minority tribe or majority tribe, what we should strive for is inclusiveness.
The perception of
inclusiveness will now mean that we need a leader, or our leaders should forge a country that is inclusive, that carries everybody along. We should not go on thinking about ourselves as, we need a leader that is broad-minded enough to carry everybody along, not myopic, not tunnel vision. A leader who recognizes our diversity and work within that diversity to create citizens that are Nigerians. First, before they are Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, or others. And before they are Christians or Muslim.
Right. Very on that note, unfortunately, we're out of time.
And I have to say that no matter the president you produce, he must come from somewhere.
Okay. Chibuzo Okereke and, of course, Dr. Austin Maho, thank you very much.